Welcome everybody to Spinner Rack. Today we have a very important issue that we're discussing. Mark Waid is being vilified in the press and YouTube.
He is not being vilified in the press.
He's being vilified.
The press is on the, Newsarama, Bleeding Cool. They are very much on Mark Waid's side. So, then we can continue.
And so they're trying to drag the good name of Mark Waid, who's one of the head writers for Marvel Comics, through the mud because of a wild, out there suit being brought from somebody who we don't even know of, you know.
Well, I mean, there's a YouTube channel, and then there's also a movement which the YouTube channel is connected to. I think the channel is Comics Matter with your boy Zach, who is Richard Meyer, and he used to be a part of Comics and Diversity. And I think I've shared the site when he did some reviews of I think some X-Men books from the 90s, and he talked about what the past comic books were like in comparison to today, and talk about the SJW, the sort of thing,
SJW,
that sort of stuff, SJW Marvel, and go through different
people stuck in the past who refuse to try and do something different. Look, there's nothing wrong. Let's just get to the crux of the matter.
We haven't got to the crux. We haven't established the whole story.
All right,
basically, this guy was critiquing comics, right? He was critiquing comics like we've done. We've critiqued comics, but the difference is that at some point the pro says, well, what can you do? Now, the comic book industry, for a lot of creators that don't sell comics, there's a market for when you go to Indiegogo and Kickstarter.
Right.
There's definitely a market. Steve Ditko, who used to have his books in Jim Hanley's universe.
That's a comic book company, a comic book retailer?
Comic book store that was in New York City. He had a small area of all of his black and white books that didn't really move that much. But Robin Schneider, who she started doing Kickstarters and Facebook promoting, and then those books were moving. And I think, Dan, Beretton, he did the Nocturnals. I think, Jason Pearson also is doing a Body Bags Kickstarter.
Did the Nocturnals get picked up by a publisher?
Yeah, it did. It got a Kickstarter to get the first 2 editions published, and then I think there's a third one. And then there was one book that they put out. So a lot of things is different from the comic book market, and it can bring you a lot of interest there. So this is what Richard Meyer from Comics Matter did. He did his book, which is called JAWBREAKERS. I think that's the Lost Souls. And he might have another book, but he did a Kickstarter.
He raised $400,000.
Very successful.
That is like banana successful.
But you pointed out to me that at this point, if you have 1,000 true fans,
right,
and this is what he did. This is not a testament of the comic book industry. It's a testament of what you can make. You can monetize your fans.
That is one of the most successful Kickstarters ever. I mean, for a comic, and this is for a guy who is not even in the industry, creating his own stuff. This is what his first foray. Yeah. So it's like it boggles the mind. So the thought is not really the comic that people are coming after. They're backing because of his particular views, and particularly the views that are really pushing are the anti-SJW views. Look, let's get serious. There was a time when comics were made for a particular group of people, and that's understandable because that's just the way it was at the time. But times have changed, for the love of God. Yes, have some of the changes been controversial and difficult? Yes, I think so. And some of them probably should have been rolled back. I'll go back to this again. I think we said this about Thor, making Thor a woman. We've said this about Ironheart. We've said this about several characters. But we don't get hung up on this and not move on. You either appreciate the characters or you don't, and you go. But there's some people who've gone on a crusade because the characters cannot change. The characters are stuck in a particular way, and they don't believe there's any change. Look, I hated Beta Ray Bill. If we want to go that far.
I get what you're saying, but the thing is that everyone has their hang-ups as far as what they want to see in comics or what they don't. Now, I'm saying we've reviewed, I always go to our Saga review that we did, which wasn't something that we necessarily liked. I pointed out some issues that I think could have helped the book. I'm saying it's had a hard instance because it wasn't very inclusive. And I think...
Saga? You're talking about the one with the horned animals?
Yes, yes. it wasn't clear. They didn't let us know who the characters was as they moved. They were just doing dialogue
Right,
like
but
we
that
knew them.
doesn't mean if it's inclusive in terms of us getting into the comic you're talking about.
I don't
Not in
know who
terms
the
of
characters were.
Right.
I didn't feel like it was including me or including someone that just picked it off the stands, picked up 44 and said, hey, I want to read Saga. I heard it was good.
Right,
like why someone said to me, I want to read the X-Men. I heard the X-Men was good. When I read back issues, I read the first one I got of the X-Men was 132. In that issue, Angel is in the book. They had this thing, hey, the Hellfire Club. Do you know these guys? I didn't know who the Hellfire Club was. And they go visit the Hellfire Club after the first question because they asked Angel. Angel's like, hey, I had a connection, only went once. So, but I'll get you guys in there. The X-Men get in there. They get attacked. They get totally beat up. And then next thing you know, at the same time, this other thing happens where there's a enemy within their midst, which is Phoenix, and it's starting the move towards Dark Phoenix. But Dark Phoenix becomes the Black Queen. It's like, wow, everything is happening, but I know all the characters. I know the Hellfire Club. I know the X-Men.
And you got that off the 132.
I just see everything I explained to you. I don't get that, and it's the same thing. All I said with Saga was it needed captions so I would understand who these were. Say, this is 5 years since then, such and such happened, that sort of thing. I'm saying, but everybody has their hang-ups of what they dislike and dislike. But after this point, the book, as you said, you're saying the success of the Kickstarter, the book was picked up by Antarctica Press. Mm-hmm. That means it would have an initial sales thing to see if those numbers would also translate to sales in the bookstores. Besides the people that were getting shipped the incentives, the Antarctica would be selling it at the same time. But then there was a pushback against Antarctica, and this is where the suit comes in, because there was a call between Mark Waid and one of the publishers, I think it's Ben Dunn and Joe Dunn, who the at least owners / editors-in-chief of Antarctica Press.
Right.
And from that point, JAWBREAKERS was canceled. And they said, we're not publishing the book. And the initial thing
But that's what they said, is that because of that call, that's what happened. But now they're doing depositions, and depositions are saying differently.
No, that's not what they said. Was Ben Dunn said in the interview that he wasn't. It's been like Pearl Harbor for them when he wrote, and this has been found in Discovery. Like and it says if Mark Waid hadn't gotten involved, if hadn't butted in, that was the exact words. And then there in Discovery, they also had to release text messages saying of, Mark Waid asking about certain things, saying things that, says that there's a push, and then him wanting one of the Joe or Ben Dunn to say that he didn't bully them because he had heard that the publisher was crying to Richard Meyer about the situation and he wanted it. So then the depositions happen, and they're not been that salacious to. Antarctica hasn't been tough on Mark Waid, and they haven't said that they directly forced them to cancel the book, and that's what they're highlighting in Bleeding Cool and
that's what we're saying, that he also talked to his staff about whether this was a book that they should do, right? And then the decision ended up being that they didn't proceed. Of course, Meyer is trying to make it seem as though a direct correlation.
Not making it seem. He's saying that he's presenting evidence. The only thing that Mark Waid is doing now is saying that it shouldn't take place in Texas. He's saying, I didn't know I was calling Texas. I wasn't. And then there was also another bit where he said, I don't do anything in Texas. But he went to a Comic-Con in Texas and talked about the situation. So then he had to change his deposition to say, yes, I was there, but when I called, I didn't have the information. I don't know how I got the number, but I got the number through some friend that I don't remember. And then I called, I didn't know I was calling Texas. So ultimately, it could be just delay of game, but we haven't even got to the...
If it's occurred there, most likely it's going to be hard for him to change it.
Yeah.
Of course, the delay, but if the whole purpose, if Mark Waid is trying to say that, look, so there's two things that could happen. Mark Waid is saying, and this is what Meyer is saying, that Mark Waid publicized the fact that he stopped the publication of JAWBREAKERS, right?
Yes.
He put pressure.
In text message, he also said,
but
wait for a little while so it doesn't look like I'm taking the victory lap.
Okay. Yeah. But he was always talking about the damn thing. So what are you talking about? So it did look as though he took it.
Yeah.
Now the question is whether or not that influenced them, or was it
torturous interference? Yes.
Or whether that was one of many other factors. and the factor being that, hey, this comic really couldn't sell. You know, if it did $400,000,
Well,
I'm just, it just confounds me in terms of that
Yes.
Kickstarter, because it's such a huge number for a comic. I mean, I don't know why it's number 7 or 8 or 10.
he has a lot. That's the thing. He has a lot of followers and a lot of subscribers. So I'm not saying it doesn't. I think the thing is or I think one of the issues when we initially talked about it, because we didn't know, there wasn't a case when we first started looking at the numbers of the Kickstarter. So we were like, wow, where did these numbers come from? And how did it get so large? But one of the things is that one of the issues that you were having, that it looked like a Rob Liefeld book, right?
Yes.
It didn't look like it was something where you said, well, this is, and that's not to say that, I mean, it's not, I would say it's more of, say, older David Finch sort of book, like that sort of thing. Or maybe, not, I can't, it's hard to say Mark Silvestri, but let's say David Finch, early David Finch for Image. That's what it says. It looked like an Image book. The excitement for Image, that sort of thing.
Right.
So it's going to be slam bam action, that sort of thing. But you know, comics have moved more towards Vertigo, which is sort of the issue that people are having this thing which includes all these different markets instead of the gung ho action film. And the whole point in the past, because I think was it Comics Matter? They talk about the way it used to be having Amazing Heroes, but back in the days, Amazing Heroes hated everything. They liked Alan Moore. They hated the X-Men. They hated basically.
And who are Amazing Heroes?
Well, basically, the Comics Journal declared themselves as the critiques of comic books, and they had side books where they didn't have to be as rough, which was basically doing interviews with creators. So if they had 2 books, one was Amazing Heroes, and then one that wasn't connected to. This is basically like Entertainment Weekly or Entertainment Monthly sort of books for comics, and they basically interview comic book pros.
Got it.
The Comics Journal turned to just critiques, and Amazing Heroes would do just sort of not as tough critiques, but they hated a lot of stuff. So being a fan reading books, and I'm still reading the X-Men, then I read the review, like, Lord, it's rough. Like, I feel like, am I an idiot for reading these books? Should I
people are going to come with their whole baggage or whatever they do. Look,
but this
is the problem I've always had, is that, look, I'm thinking, yes, we understand about the whole thing with the suit. We understand about how he feels. And look, I don't want to have any creator to be, blocked. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, we have freedoms here, and you should be allowed to. If you have a publisher who's willing to do it, but this publisher also understands that, you know, Mark Waid is not just anybody in this industry. He's one of Marvel's top dudes. Marvel's still backing him because he's still making stories, War of the Realms amongst others. And you have this dude out of the blue who basically has an agenda, and he's pushing it towards it. You know, and the biggest thing is that, you know,
this thing. He has an agenda. Marvel has an agenda.
Marvel has an agenda.
We all have an agenda.
Look, let's look at it serious. Comics make up a small portion. They make millions, if that. Okay, there's some comics that make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Comics that sell 15,000 a month. Mm-hmm. You know, they're probably going to end up making about $1 million or 600,000 for the year, right? You know, but if you do several issues and variants, you can definitely add it up. And I'm not saying you can't do a comic run, but let's look at the seriousness of this. Marvel has for their TV shows, they make tens of millions. You know, for the movies, they make billions, right? And so they have to appeal to larger audiences. Whereas the comic audience is a pretty smaller, much older, and more homogeneous. Well, I guess it's not, because here in New York, it's pretty all over the place. Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying, in general, though, it's a much older, more conservative view as opposed to the rest of society.
Yeah.
And when you go see the Marvel movies, you see everybody of all ages, from little kids to adults to people in their, I guess, 60s, 70s. You see all kinds of people, all colors, all persuasions. And so Marvel's, of course, you know, they're in for the money to do what? Make money. And so they're going to cast as big as a net as they possibly can. I've said this many times before.
Is Marvel casting the big net? I say, look at the Avengers movie, right?
Okay.
How much time do we get into the relationships of the Avengers in the last 2 movies, the love affairs? How many of that, like in the Marvel comics, the love triangles, the marriage, all that stuff is a part of that. And in the Avengers movies, there's basically no time to spend on that besides a couple of moments. Maybe Hulk looking at the what's the name, the Black Widow.
Right.
And
Well, what about Vision and Scarlet Witch? Those are a whole
but
thing.
we get the okay, they live together, but we not all of that stuff is off camera. We
Do
get
we
the
need to
hint
see
of
it?
that. No, we see them in the house and say, hey, this is working out. That's not showing having the relationship be a part of the story. So saying all these bits of anything of what besides your banter,
Right.
is sort of sidelined for the story, and the movies are hugely successful, which is what comics were. They would have love triangles. They might have a marriage, but the marriage sometimes at the same time would be sort of quick, like they wouldn't even spend time for an engagement. The first engagement is like Superman.
But we get that, you know. I mean,
But I'm saying that the fact of being totally inclusive is just basically doing a powerful story with the Avengers, not dealing with their sexuality, this, that, and the other. And I think that's the basic argument, is like we're getting bogged down. And I think maybe the way the Comics Matter went about it and how they sort of, everyone is sort of, we've been insulting and slashing at people, but it's like,
I wouldn't say insulting and slashing. I think we've just been giving
we can be tough about
our honest
stuff.
opinion, and we've been straight. Some things have been pretty rough.
I just don't feel that a group of people should go out and decide, you know what, we're helping people by forcing someone not to publish a book, because it would hurt even more if Antarctica Press put it out there and people didn't buy it. But then you hear retailers saying, we're not going to buy it because then you're like...
But you can have the same thing where people can buy something that's pretty destructive, and that's not good at all, too.
What do you mean? You're saying that the thing is like... So, I mean, like, that's the thing. If we're picking and choosing our fights, and we're saying, okay, let's go in there and decide to tear something down. But most of the thing is for shock value, to wake up and say, oh, this person is bad. Oh, person is that. And if it's directly connecting to anything, I don't know. But I don't think that a group of people should go and attack this thing. And,
they are attacking other things. Look, if you, this is the problem I hate. You want to attack others and disparage what they do. Mm-hmm. And when they attack you, you want to complain, oh, well, you're a public figure, so you shouldn't be allowed to do it. So then why are you attacking them? It's not right. Either way.
So you're saying that, so in relation to this, you're saying that he's attacking them, or just...
He's attacking Waid, clearly.
He's insulted Waid probably in the past. I'm pretty sure he's gone through, if you read some of the reviews, but I don't think that the reviews are any tougher than the reviews I've done and the reviews in Amazing Heroes. So reviews in Amazing Heroes don't get into the SJW, all these current terms that don't mean anything.
Right.
Like, I get that part of it. But, I mean, you have to remember that comic reviews, the thing is that we're in a new golden age, right? Where the writers are stronger than the thing. So most of the time people talk about old comics, they say they're not that good. I just think that the reviews at points are what they are. Reviewers can be tough. They can have a moment, something that says something that hits you in the gut and hurts you, makes you feel bad about this. But as a creator, you're supposed to just, supposed to just power through with your story that you were telling, that you were hitting your marks. And if it's working, if Mark Waid is making his money, do that. If Richard Meyer makes his book, and it works well in Indiegogo, it doesn't mean it's going to sell that much in the stands. Just let it go out there, and if it dies out, if you decide. But the comic book industry is in a bad shape to be fighting this sort of little war. And this case is different because this is saying he interfered with it. Whereas if he hadn't made the call, or whatever that call, no one will actually, I don't think we'll get to hear all that information about what happened in the initial calls. But it's just hard to say. I mean, comic reviews are tough.
I agree, they're tough. You know what I'm trying to say? But you have to also be, the problem I hate is like, you look at the pundits that you see on TV sometimes, and they go all the way to the freaking left, or they go all the way to the freaking right. And sometimes what you get is, as opposed to saying, I disagree with something, and these are my reasons, explanations for why I disagree with. And don't get me wrong, Comic Matters, I think, has done that sometimes. But it's like in every single one, it's like he continually pushes going that way. So look, I don't knock it. If you really are into that, just finding this is your type of thing where you like to knock, and that makes you feel comfortable doing what you have to do, so be it. And if Waid is doing that on his own, then you know what? You're guilty as hell, and then you are going to probably have to go too. But right
Well,
now,
I don't think.
but right now, I don't think it looks like he's going to have to do that because they're saying it was more than just Waid doing it. So
I think Waid can lose this and still come out unscathed because he already did an Indiegogo for his legal fees. So if he loses it, they're probably going to settle at some point. If he loses, I mean,
how do you continue if you lose?
No, that's what the law. That's what also there's a couple sites, but the Comics Matter site, they're also saying the lawyers already teach you a different way of understanding what winning and losing is. So that's what Waid is doing. Waid is saying, yes, we haven't get jurisdiction out, but Ben Dunn didn't say that I forced him to do that. He said he didn't prevent him. Like, that's a victory. We won.
Oh my God.
We won that, and and for everyone, that's the same thing.
Well, that's a pretty low bar.
But I'm saying if Richard Meyer doesn't get the money he asked for, and it's like
$400,000
or whatever it is, maybe they get it down to half of that. They'll be like, we got this amount of money, and then Mark Waid will be like, well, they wanted this, and we got that. So it's like the same thing.
Actually,
saying
you got
everything.
A good point there.
But I think Waid is. I mean, we've argued this between us, and as fans of Mark Waid's writing, I think he can lose this, and it be no effect. Like Richard Meyer will be on the side to his fans, and this is not an insult. He'll be his fan and say we won, and there'll be that much people because basically we've learned to be able to accept 2 points and people be on two sides of the fences and the two never meet, because there's 3 million people fans of Mark Waid. Like, why do they need to now say, you know what, Meyer was right, he shouldn't have done that. They're like, no, they're going to be like, well, he did this, he's that, he's the
just
other.
like DC and MCU fans.
Yeah.
All right, so I see a point. Look.
This was a tough one.
It really was a tough one because, I don't see the problem. If Mark Waid feels as though he wants to tell people and give his opinion on something, which is a legit thing, which people do all the time.
He was kind of rough, and the same way.
Look, you can't say, Peter. We're beating around the same bush.
What bush?
Look, you can say, here it is. You can say, look, I want to write this comic book, and I can say, I think that's a crazy idea. You're going to go over to the publisher, and I say, listen, I think that's a comic book I don't think you really should be writing.
You interfere with what I did.
But that's just my opinion.
No, but you can't. What is your connection to publishing the book?
My connection is I think it's a bad idea.
They don't take reviews.
Tortuous interference is where Mark Waid would have had the power to say, stop, don't publish it. If you do, here are the consequences. And we don't see that in any of the things that Mark Waid has said there are consequences for not publishing.
There is some of the text messages where they say, the hardest part is the stuff that is unclear that hasn't come out, that Antarctica Press has a company that does their coloring that's connected to Marvel. Okay. That does stuff as a favor. So it could have been saying there's a possible, but none of this stuff has come out yet. So the problem is that there is stuff where he hints at saying, tell me that I didn't, because he's probably got the guy in text messages saying, say I didn't bully you. And the guy wouldn't do that. But he hasn't said that Waid has. Instead, the only thing he said in text messages is that Mark Waid butted in, put his nose. If he hadn't put his nose in it, and they got to see the dark underbelly of Marvel. He's never said what that's meant.
Sure, those are some big freaking accusations you're making there, and I don't know about that.
What do you mean?
Because if you're saying that basically you're saying, hey, if you publish it, this your inker is going to go, or your colorist may go.
I don't know. That's the thing.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say. It has to be more than just saying, hey, I think that's a bad idea. People write things all the time and say, stop, this guy's a bad idea, and they'll do it. Right now they have the Metropolitan Museum where they stopped the president of Brazil from having a state dinner there because they say, yo, this dude is like a nutcase. Let's not include him in this thing. Mm-hmm. And so now you're saying that, but the only way it works is unless Marvel using their influence and power.
And I don't know if that's ever going to come out.
Exactly. And so if that's the case, Mark Waid is clear. Because he gave his opinion.
He might be clear, but it's,
Dude, Mark, you got enough money.
He has no connection
just
to...
settle the thing, call it
a. Yeah, there we go.
And move on and get your butt in the studio making some more comics. That's what you need to be doing.
Yes, yeah. That's what I feel. And I thank you, Mario. I almost lost him. You always went to sleep on me on this one.
No, I did not.